More local healthcare workers receiving the Pfizer vaccine today as Moderna's vaccine awaits the final green light it needs for distribution. And a third vaccine may be right around the corner, the company with a single-dose vaccine that could follow in the footsteps of Pfizer and Moderna. And the local church in a legal fight to lift restrictions during the pandemic. ABC 10 News at 11 starts now.
ABC 10 News at 11 starts now.
Hi there. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Virginia Cha. My co-anchor Jim Patton is here as well at home, as well as meteorologist Megan Perry. We're going to hear from both of them in just a moment. But first, this. That's Vice President Mike Pence. He and his wife receiving the Pfizer coronavirus vaccine this morning as that rollout continues. U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams also getting that shot today. He and the Vice President reiterated this morning what health experts have been saying, that the vaccine is effective and safe.
Karen and I wanted to step forward and take this vaccine to assure the American people that while we cut red tape, we cut no corners. The American people can be confident.
Now, President Trump says he will get the vaccine down the road at a, quote, appropriate time. President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris have also both committed to getting the vaccine in public at some point. Meanwhile, here in San Diego, more healthcare workers are being vaccinated this morning. That is happening a few days into the rollout of the Pfizer vaccine and on the verge of another vaccine expected to be added to the mix. We could be less than 24 hours away from the Moderna vaccine being shipped across the country. ABC 10 News reporter Vanessa Pajot says what more doses means for people hoping to be vaccinated.
Alex Azar, the Health and Human Services Secretary for the U.S., told ABC News that trucks are rolling in and planes are arriving in them. Close to 6 million Moderna vaccines ready to roll out once they're approved by the FDA.
It's like last Friday when I told you about Pfizer. This morning, I can tell you and your viewers that the FDA has communicated to Moderna that we expect to grant their emergency use authorization. That could come as soon as today.
Of those Moderna vaccines, California could get close to double the amount of doses they received from Pfizer last week.
This is an exceptionally safe vaccine. It's a shockingly effective vaccine, the Moderna vaccine as well as the Pfizer vaccine.
U.S. officials not just expressing confidence in both vaccines, but proving it, with top officials like Vice President Mike Pence and his wife getting Pfizer shots early Friday.
We just want to make sure people know we have got supreme confidence in the process and confidence in the safety and efficacy of the vaccine, and we wouldn't ask you to do something that we wouldn't do.
Moderna and Pfizer vaccines rely on the same approach, jumpstarting the immune system with messenger RNA. A recent review by the FDA confirmed the overall effectiveness between the two nearly identical. Meanwhile, as Pfizer vaccines continue to roll out across the country, one of San Diego's medical directors at Sharp Healthcare was the first frontline worker there to receive a Pfizer vaccine early Friday.
Almost half, if not half, the patients that are in the hospital is related to COVID. So this is very real. People are there because they're very ill, very sick. And what you're going to get from the vaccine is nothing in comparison to being in a hospital.
When Moderna vaccines get approved by the FDA, they will have to follow CDC guidelines, which states that healthcare workers and those elderly, more vulnerable, will have priority when it comes to who gets vaccinated first. Reporting from home this morning, Vanessa Paz, ABC 10 News.
Vanessa, thank you so much. And we may yet have another vaccine option on the horizon. Johnson & Johnson says that they now have full enrollment in their the vaccine made by Johnson & Johnson's subsidiary Janssen will come in a single dose, and the trial now has about 45,000 participants. The company says they expect to have interim data by the end of January. If the trial goes well, Johnson & Johnson says they expect to submit the trial results to the FDA for emergency use authorization sometime in February. Well, the CDC is dedicating this weekend to sorting out their recommendation for who should be next in line to receive the vaccine after health workers and nursing home residents. The emergency meeting will include a federal panel of vaccination experts. Now, some panelists say they're leaning toward putting essential workers next because they have higher infection rates. Others say older adults not living in nursing homes should be next, along with people who have certain medical conditions because they have a higher risk of death. Well, regardless of what the CDC decides, states will ultimately get to make their own decision. Starting to give COVID vaccinations to people at nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Company struck a deal with the federal government to run on-site clinics, and this is beginning at locations in Ohio, Connecticut, and Florida. Both companies plan to expand to facilities in other states next week. Residents of long-term care facilities account for nearly 40% of all the U.S. COVID deaths. Virginia?
Thank you, Jim. This is new today. A San Diego brewery is among a group suing the state over requirements that they say they have to serve food to be able to serve beer. This is a requirement that's been in place for months to try to cut down on gatherings at places like bars. But this group of breweries is calling the restriction arbitrary in light of wineries not being held to the same requirement of serving food. They say they're not getting equal consideration from state regulators, and now they want a judge to step in. And yet another legal battle brewing involving a local church that has been in and out of court for months, pushing to get certain restrictions lifted. ABC 10 News reporter Cassie Carlisle tells us how the latest court ruling opening the door for restaurants is giving a church in Chula Vista hope, too.
The South Bay United Pentecostal Church has been involved in a legal battle since May.
If religious liberties are lost, you can mark it down. Your personal liberties are going to be lost.
Pastor Arthur Hodges with South Bay United Pentecostal Church said they are protected by the First Amendment in the Constitution to practice religion indoors. They filed a lawsuit that was rejected by the Supreme Court in May. Since then, on December 3rd, the Supreme Court issued a brief unsigned order to California judges to reconsider Governor Newsom's restrictions. This after the Supreme Court ruled in favor of places of worship in New York, saying the restrictions are a violation of the First Amendment. Locally, a judge ruled Wednesday restaurants could reopen indoors.
That absolutely makes us hopeful, and you know, I've told restaurateurs, business owners, whatever, we're fighting for you too. Now, we have a bigger gun than they do. We've got the Constitution, okay? They don't have that. Restaurants aren't named in the Constitution, but they found other ways, you know, as far as like people's right to assemble.
Pastor Hodges is hopeful today's hearing will pave the way for San Diego and the rest of the country. In Chula Vista, Cassie Carlisle, ABC 10 News.
The pastor says he is not aware of any cases tied to his church. However, county health officials have noted outbreaks at other churches, including at 3 San Diego Awaken Church locations. The county says more than 60 people were infected after parishioners continued to congregate indoors despite cease and desist orders. All of this is coming, as Cassie mentioned, on the heels of the court ruling over strip clubs that the judge has since clarified does in fact cover restaurants as well. That judge blocking the government from placing restrictions on indoor dining. One restaurant in Little Italy, Nolita Hall, has been working quickly to reopen to try to recoup costs while they can. They say they are opening indoor dining, but they're limiting it.
What I'm expecting is to open up at 25% capacity indoors. We do have, we put extensive work into the dining room for indoor dining before, so we have plexiglass up between tables, everything's 6 feet apart, you know, so we feel like we can do it safely and we're comfortable with it.
The governor's office plans to appeal that court ruling. Several county leaders also working to reverse the ruling. They say they have concerns about lifting these restrictions, which were put in place in response to the spike in cases.
And here's a look at the latest numbers here in San Diego. More than 2,600 new cases reported in the latest round of daily testing. 9% of those tested were determined to be infected. Well, new today, the Supreme Court has dismissed a challenge to President Trump's plan to exclude up to 10.5 million undocumented immigrants from the census count. The census is used to determine how many votes each group or state gets. And the court said that the challengers, a coalition of states led by New York and immigrant rights groups, did not have the legal injury necessary to bring the case. But the court's decision is not a final ruling on the matter, and it's not clear whether Trump will receive final numbers from the Census Bureau before he leaves office next month. Well, some breaking news to tell you about now. Big backup on the I-5 because of a body that was found in the road. Sky 10 overhead in the last 30 minutes. This is in Cortez Hill near downtown, right at the 163 interchange, where several northbound lanes of the I-5 have been shut down. CHP issued a SIG alert. It's unclear right now how that body ended up in the road, and we'll bring you updates, of course, as soon as we get them. Well, coming up, getting a look at what SDCCU Stadium looks like with its demolition in full swing.
And Congress pushing up against multiple deadlines as many lawmakers continue to express optimism about a potential pandemic relief package.
And a fair weather day today with a warm up this weekend. I'll pinpoint how long our warm weather is going to stick around.
Take a look this morning, Sky 10 giving us a look at the progress being made on the demolition of SDCCU Stadium. Can you see the huge hole in the stadium right by the scoreboard? Well, crews are in the process of tearing this stadium down to make way for what will be the new home of SDSU football come 2022. Slippery roads contributing to this crash in Normal Heights overnight. It happened on the 805 right by the ramp to the 8 East. According to the CHP, the driver lost control and slammed into the guardrail. She was helped by a homeless man who happened to be nearby, ran out onto the freeway to see if she was okay. She did not appear to be seriously hurt. Paramedics were called in, but the driver declined their help. Jim?
Virginia, new public health order in the Bay Area mandating a 10-day quarantine for anyone traveling, moving, or returning to San Francisco. Mayor's announcement coming as we get closer to another typically busy travel week. There are a few exceptions to the quarantine for certain critical activities, including medical professionals, those traveling for official government business, or essential infrastructure work. The order will be in effect until at least January 4th. A window is closing for Democrats and Republicans in Washington to reach a deal on a COVID relief package. Winter break around the corner and extra unemployment benefits are on the verge of expiring. ABC's Faith Abube has the latest on the talks to finalize a relief package.
Congressional leaders are facing yet another December cliffhanger. This time, government funding and pandemic aid on the line, putting tens of millions of Americans at risk of losing crucial federal benefits.
After all these months, struggling Americans don't just need action. They need action fast.
Despite days of promising a deal is close at hand, lawmakers are still wrestling with the details of a nearly $900 billion coronavirus relief package. Democrats insisting on emergency aid to state governments, while Republicans want the Federal Reserve's powers limited. Congressional leaders are tying the COVID relief bill to the need to fund the government, hoping to apply more urgency to get both deals done. The current holdup could force a short partial government shutdown and a rare weekend session on Capitol Hill. Meanwhile, Americans desperate for that aid are living harsh realities, losing their jobs, running out of money, and facing evictions. Restaurant owners like Mindy Reed barely hanging on, taking in only $300 a night.
I'm losing money every day that I'm open.
In Massachusetts, this food bank already serving 10 times the number of people it did pre-pandemic and preparing for even more people in need.
In January and February, because they're going to have to decide food or heat, what they're going to pay for, that will be at $1,000 or so.
The $900 billion compromise bill would give most Americans $600 in direct payments and add an additional $300 a week in federal unemployment benefits if Congress can get around to passing it.
I will note that had the Republican majority joined in negotiations any time in the last 6 months as we had requested, we would not be in the unfortunate position of negotiating against the government funding deadline.
And right now it's unclear whether Congress will pass a temporary funding bill to keep the government from shutting down at midnight while these negotiations continue. Faith Abube, ABC News, Washington.